Hello, everybody. Welcome to another lovely tier maker video. Today's topic, good guys versus bad guys. That is, of course, the forces of chaos and our many legions versus the filthy Imperial swine. And we have a couple of different ways we're going to evaluate today. We're going to be looking at the meta relevancy of the factions, and I will do my best to ignore how much I am biased towards the much cooler, much spikier boys.
Yep. So we'll see how much that actually can be ignored. But starting out, let's get it to strong Blood Angels.
Woo! Um, I feel like Blood Angels have taken a couple of hits in that I no longer think they're just the best way to play melee Space Marines.
Oh,
Um,
also, for those who have been living under a rock, uh, the major changes to Space Marines are they and Chaos Space Marines. Armor Contempt gone, very dead. And then, but they now have sticky objectives. They hold an objective, they keep in the command phase, they keep holding it. And all of their stuff got stupid cheap, including free war gear on things that really did not need free war gear.
and
And
a
should
slew of
never have
point
had free war
reductions.
gear. Yep, points
Yeah.
reductions, free war gear at just great times.
So if you are a fan of the Children of Baal, you didn't benefit quite as much as some of the other chapter Space Marines have. You're still very good in terms of you have a lot of these fast moving, high damage units, but I just don't think you are the hardest hitter anymore. Um,
So the big advantage that the main problem that Blood Angels have now is losing Armor of Contempt. They were heavily relying on it more than almost any other Space Marine chapter, in my opinion, because they relied on spamming Sanguinary Guard, with which have a native 2-up save, but no invulnerable save. That's going to be a lot harder to do now, especially since Melta is probably coming back into the meta in a very big way. However, as compensation, they get free Inferno pistols on everything, which are basically tiny Melta pistols. And so that's good.
yeah, you do get a lot of free, like random upgrades here and there. I saw somebody that, as a joke, was just spamming as many free Inferno pistols as possible. I don't think that's not a legitimate thing, but what I do say is I'm not as confident in them being the top tier for Space Marines. And I think they fit very snugly in the B category, B for
For
Blood
Blood
Angel.
Angels. Speaking of angels, we got
Yep,
ourselves some Dark Angels. All right, these were actually really good.
they're super good.
Dark Angels are actually kind of terrifying.
I'm reluctant to say that they're the absolute best Imperial Space Marines, but they could be. Um,
I'm saying they are.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Um, so Dark Angels basically have two builds that I think will do well. One of them is 30 Dark Angels Terminators, just souped up with all the upgrades, and then you just have another 1,000 points of fire support and buffing ability. That is a terrifying list, and that list will just win people a lot of games because it just stat checks people. And a lot of people, I think, are going to fail that stat check. But they also have the bike spam build, which is multi-motas everywhere, but they also have 4 pinfuls.
Yes. So I want to say one thing about each of those lists. So the first list that you mentioned with the Terminators, it feels very akin to playing against like unnerfed Leviathan Tyranid warriors, in
Yeah.
that you have transhuman on everything. So you're
Mhm.
always failing to wounds ones, twos, threes. And you have like pretty good saves, whatever those saves might be. You get pretty good saves across the board. You
Yep.
have decent invulns across the board.
Mhm.
And it makes your opponent have to roll dice at you because you're going to
Yep.
present them with these big threats. And a lot of the time, your opponent does not win the dice check against you. And there's very few armies that I think just do.
Yep,
And when they run into the armies that do, it doesn't say they instantly lose. They just have to change their game plan up a bit. So that's a
the
good
tr
build.
the trick with Dark Angels, the Terminator build, is previously it had the problem of just fundamentally it did not have enough stuff. And now, because you had your three Terminator bricks and that was 1,500 points of your list. Now you have three Terminator bricks and that's only 1,000 points of your list. Hmm.
Ugh.
And so
Yeah.
now you're suddenly like, okay, I can actually just run a lot of these, and it's very hard for people, and then still have the meat behind it that I'm not completely relying on these slow but very durable bricks to win me the game.
And the Darkwing side of things, the fast moving
Ravenwing.
Ravenwing, excuse me,
Hmm.
Ravenwing side of things, the fast moving. I guess I would say they're a lot more shooty, the a lot more
Yep.
shooty side of things.
Oh, they're
Um,
100% more shooty.
I actually think that's a I want to say that's better than just the Terminator bricks because it has so many different angles that it can attack their opponent from. And I legitimately cannot think of anything that I think is just a bad matchup for that play style where it's like fast
Yeah,
moving shooting with good saves.
I
And
agree. I
they're
think it's a very strong list.
yeah, and their mission play isn't bad. So I feel like the Raven Wing is maybe even better than the Terminator bricks. Time will tell,
Mhm.
but in either case, very strong faction. I
Yep.
think
Both case, I think S tier is deserved for them.
yep,
Next up,
absolutely.
Death Guard.
Woo!
So, speaking of uh things that slowly walk up the board at you, that's Death Guard in a nutshell. Death Guard are an interesting one. They feel like they are an army that has only a very, very limited selection of good builds, but
Yes.
those good builds are actually quite good.
The way I think of it is they effectively have two good builds.
Hmm.
The what is probably the best build is the Plague Marine spam build. You bring
Yep.
as many Plague Marines as you are allowed to bring, and you bring three Plague Burst Crawlers alongside that to kind of just help with shooting. Plague Burst
Mhm.
Crawlers are actually surprisingly good into a lot of the meta choices at the
Yeah,
moment.
they're just very good in general.
Yeah, they're worth their points. They're survivable.
Hmm.
And then the Plague Marines kind of grind up the table. You maybe bring a Rhino to help them. You maybe bring some Foetid Blight drones just to have something jump on an objective right away. And then you can bring like a Nurgle Demon ally detachment if you would like to, just to get some forward to play with Nurglings. So they're a very objective oriented army now. And that
I agree with
slow
that.
moving melee, the slow moving melee feels better because you have more
Hmm.
options and more cheaper options to get up the board quickly to at least start your
Yeah.
objective control game plan. That
An
said,
interesting thing with Death Guard and Plague Marines, I think, is that though Death Guard are kind of supposed to be a high durability faction, I consider Plague Marines to actually be almost they lost durability, but they gained a huge amount of damage output.
this is true. Um, and they're now, I believe, 19 points per model, and
19
that
points a model.
is
Yep.
19 points per model. And that is a really good place to be so that you can spam them out. Now, again, I don't think they're as mathematically efficient as something like Dark Angels, where you got 600 additional points with your army essentially. But they won't just get blown away by medium powered shooting,
Mhm.
and they have some okay counterpunch against a lot of things. So I think they're good. Now,
Yep.
how good do
I
I
think
think
they're
they
good.
are? I think they're probably B tier good.
Yeah.
And I did mention there's two builds. I just talked about the first one, briefly mentioning the second. The second is the heavy armor builds where it's still got Plague Marines in it, obviously, and you still have Poxwalkers as an
Hmm.
option that you can take. But you're focusing more on the heavy armor stuff. So you have things like the Blight drones, the Plague Burst Crawlers in Moss, and then you're bringing some Dread Blades and you're bringing potentially Mortarion. And that build's actually not bad. You have a bunch of vehicles and it's more heavily armored than the Plague Marine build, but it does the mission okay and it actually shoots pretty dang good. So that's always an
So,
option.
yeah, I think the problem with Death Guard is that whichever of those builds you go for, you're going to have some matchups that are just a loss for you that
Yeah,
you just don't win. And some matchups that are an auto win, but some matchups that you just lose, and there's almost nothing you can do. It doesn't matter how even like the best player would lose this matchup most times,
Yeah.
and that is what relegates them to B tier in my mind. That's what keeps them here.
Yeah, I agree. If you're looking for tips on how to play Death Guard to the best tournament level possible, we actually have a full guide that recently went up that was done by our friend Mike, warphammer.com. So check it out if you're interested.
Next up, Emperor's Children. Quite good. Just
Yeah,
fundamentally very good.
very good.
Noise Marines,
Similar.
very good.
Yeah, similar to Plague Bearers in that, or Plague Marines, in that your list becomes just the data sheet in a lot of ways.
Yep.
So with Emperor's Children, you are spamming Noise Marines. You are spamming as many
much
Noise Marines
harder
as
than
possible.
Plague Marines.
Oh yeah, you are filling your troop slots up. You're
Yep.
probably bringing 6+ units of them. You're taking Blastmasters so they can shoot. You maybe take one unit with Sonic Blasters just so you can do the Mortal Wound strat, maybe.
Yeah.
But you're having
And then
them as
you
these
just
nice shooting, nice melee, good strats, and they didn't actually go up in points. They did lose Armor of Contempt, but so did everything else. And that means they have a lot more targets that their Blastmasters actually ruin the day of than they did before.
I also want to mention the Emperor's Children have maybe some of the best Smash characters in Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah.
And some of the best in the game. That those 4 HQ slots for them are excellent. You're probably going to be using all 4 of them in all competitive lists. Just they're that good.
Yeah, Lucius is fantastic.
Lucius
He's
is
a
incredible. Demon Prince
standout.
amazing.
Demon Prince good. The what are they called? Disco Lord. The Disco Lord with Emperor's Children also very solid. So they just have a lot of good. They have a lot of good data sheets still. The cost of the Mark of Slanesh went up, which is an unfortunate change. And I feel like that pushes you even further into the camp of, okay, I just am going to bring Noise Marines if I'm doing Slanesh stuff.
Agreed. Noise Marine, even then, so Noise Marines are good, but I think they run into the problem of just you're spamming Marine bodies without any protection on them, and people are teching to kill Marine bodies right now, or they will be. And so I think that just really hurts them and prevents them from getting too high up in the tier list.
I agree.
So
and they don't have the resistance that Death Guard do, and that -1 damage is really relevant against a bunch of damage 2 shooting. So I think they're
nowhere near like Dark Angel's durability.
Right. I would say they're maybe slightly better than Death Guard, maybe slightly worse, but they fall into that same pocket.
Agreed. I think they're better than Blood Angels.
Really interesting.
Only slightly, but slightly.
They have a fight on death strat that's also pretty solid. So that
helps. Imperial Fists. Okay,
Yay.
they got a lot better. Like a lot better. They're still quite bad.
They have a decent trait in ignoring cover. They have a really almost helpful super doctrine, and
It's
they
a lot better
are
now. It's good against vehicles when you're running. If the opponent has a lot of vehicles, their super doctrine actually becomes pretty good. Problem is you can't build around it because you can't expect your opponent to have a lot of vehicles.
So they're hamstrung by their lack of good stratagems, more or less, is the way I look at them. And they really
have
are
one really good stratagem.
Yeah, but they are, for my experience at least, they're really just Space Marine data sheets, and those are good now. But I don't think they're good enough to lift these guys too far out of the gutter. I would say like C tier.
Yeah, they really like Terminators, I will note, because of their one good stratagem, which is the stand on objective, get +1 save, +1 attack. Just good.
Woo.
Woo. Iron Hands. I've been seeing a lot of chatter about Iron Hands lately. I think they are heavily overrated.
That's
that
spicy.
is a hot take.
That is a very hot take. I have also heard the chatter. A lot of people are saying Iron Hands are meta overlords. and that maybe is true to a degree. Tell me why you wouldn't put these all the way up in the S tier along with our Dark Angels friends.
So they have some very strong shooting, just fundamentally quite good shooting. They get rear ones to hidden Devastator Doctrine, and they are perfectly happy to stay in Devastator Doctrine all game, in which case Codex Warfare is just a 15 for them. And
Yep.
so they have basically an auto 15 secondary. But I think their shooting is, while it's good, it's not spectacular. And their durability is good, but also not spectacular. And they just, the best of the Space Marine datasheets, they don't support very well, is my
Hmm.
big problem. They support a lot of datasheets fairly well. Some of the really good Space Marine datasheets as well, they support quite well. And I think the tank builds definitely are not that good. I've played against those a few times. The Gladiator Lancer spam and Storm Speeders. They're good, but they don't hit that hard. They hit quite hard, but not insanely hard. And they still are just toughness 8, 3-up save, durable, not that durable. It feels like playing against guard if guard was not as oppressive.
Yeah, I felt like I would be rolled by them when the new points came out, but
Mhm.
I'm in the same boat as you. I don't think they're actually like unstoppably insane. Like they will do the thing that Dark Angels do, or sometimes they just are better than you at math in the game.
Yeah.
And that can hurt and that can make you lose. But when it comes to like I would say really high levels of play, I don't think they support the best possible data sheets, like you said. And I do think mobility is still somewhat of an issue for a lot of the builds that I have seen.
Mhm.
Outside of the ones that are just leaning into the vehicle approach, which I actually don't think is the best way
No,
to
I've
play
played
Space
against
Marines
that
right
build
now.
a few times. It's actually not that good. So,
Where
even
are you putting
still,
them?
they have a lot of very powerful rules, and I think they're going in A tier. Because just the things that people are saying are not wrong. They do just get a 15 on secondaries, and they have some really good shooting.
I think we'd be insane to say they're not A tier.
There might be some build out there that is legitimately S tier for Iron Hands. It's not the vehicle build that's been going around.
Speaking of
Iron
vehicle-based
Warriors.
builds and slow-moving
Yes.
armies, and speaking of Iron Hands, we have Iron Warriors. So, where are we feeling? How are Portarabo's boys doing?
I really like Iron Warriors. I think they're actually very, very strong. Ignore AP 1 and 2 and Ignore Cover are fantastic traits.
Yep.
Their secondary is still mostly garbage, but it is no longer untakeable.
Plague Marines and Iron Warriors are very good.
Plague Marines and
And
Iron Warriors are comical.
yeah, you can
Just,
stack, for those that don't know, you can stack a lot of -1 damage on units. And it does stack. Like the rules
oh
of the
yeah.
game state that it does stack. So you could have like -2 damage to a minimum of 1 on
Hmm.
your Plague Marine squad, as an example. And then your all of a sudden those
Also a
really
5-up against
scary
mortals.
and a 5-up against mortals. So those really scary like Casterkin squads that guard have, and those really scary big Leman Russ like that are spamming the
Hmm.
3 damage plasma. Those two units actually don't do as significant damage as you would think. And
Yep.
I found that they're quite Iron Warriors are quite good into what I expect the meta to be. And on top
Hmm.
of that, they got hurt by losing Armor of Contempt and all that other stuff,
Yes.
but they do have the old Armor of Contempt as their like faction trait. And
Yep.
so essentially they are gonna get pseudo Armor of Contempt and lose the no reroll damage, is my understanding.
Their
Um,
faction trait actually can be better than Armor of Contempt. Hmm.
Theoretically.
Because ignore AP 1 and 2, especially on units that have a 2-up save natively, or if you're a 3-up save in cover, and you have a good invuln, then it can start being very scary. Ideally, units with a 2-up save and a 4-up invuln, which there's some of. Not many, but there's a few, especially with the Cursed Earth. Then you can set up situations where, okay, I'm ignoring AP1 and AP2. And if you have AP3 or higher, well, it's on my invuln anyways. I don't care.
Yeah, and all that damage to plasma, like the Inceptors as an example, are something I'm seeing in a lot of armies now. They have a bunch of 2 damage plasma shots because that makes sense in the Space Marine meta. Totally bounce off of Iron
They
Warriors.
bounce so hard into Iron Warriors. And of course, you can use Dark Apostle like in everywhere else to give no rerolls to hit. Dark Apostle with Illusory Supplication, still just an incredible unit.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
last but not least, that I haven't mentioned, but another reason Iron Warrior's fantastic is they still get to pass out OBSEC with their Bastion Warlord trait, which
They do.
is fantastic.
It's
So
amazing.
I'm
So
thinking
yeah,
A tier.
Iron Warriors. I'm saying A tier. I don't think they're below Iron Hands, but they're good. They're just legitimately very, very strong. Night Lords.
I think you put them in D for don't bring them unless you have demon allies. Um, if you don't have demon allies, why are you playing this faction? And since we're somewhat evaluating them based on their own merit, I think they're actually pretty weak as
I
a
think
solo
they're D tier
faction
without, yeah, as a solo faction.
without
With
demons.
demon allies, they actually go up quite a bit. They're like B tier,
I think
but
they're yeah, I think they're B tier with demon allies for sure.
mhm,
And their leadership manipulation is better than people make it out to be. People clown on
mhm.
leadership manipulation, but it's actually pretty good.
It's not bad.
And yeah, they need friends
Yeah.
to do what they want to do. So D.
Raven Guard.
Ooh.
Uh,
Also I'm feeling a D on this one.
I think C. I mean, they are Space Marines. They have the Space Marine data sheets, and they do have like they can alpha strike people really, really hard.
Is your game plan like I feel like your game plan if you play Raven Guard or whatever, it's just like
Mhm.
just Alpha Strike. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's been my experience against them.
I think that's the
And
only good Raven Guard build.
yeah, I feel like C, like bottom of C, top of D kind of thing for them, to be
I
honest.
think bottom of C is totally. I think bottom of C just because they have good data sheets, they can play a decent game plan. They're not good, not a good one, but a decent one.
All right, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to
Like
you.
salamanders, definitely better than the two we've been talking about.
Oh man, I like salamanders a
I
lot.
like salamanders a lot.
Salamanders already were the faction that enjoyed Terminators more than the others.
Mhm.
Were more than most of the other Imperium factions, or Imperium legions or whatever chapters, whatever you good guys call it. So they like Terminators, and they have a lot of rules that benefit the Terminators, and they also have a very good psychic discipline. Weirdly,
They
um,
do.
so I feel like they were huge beneficiaries of the points updates.
They
So
also they are also one of the best Melta Marine chapters, Melta
mhm,
spam, and Meltas are really, really good.
that is very true.
Yeah.
And they also have some good, yeah, they have good strats too. Like they have
Mhm.
one that's like
No, they have amazing strats. Mhm.
yeah, they have
Great
one off the
strats.
top of my head. There's one that causes them to do mortal wounds,
Hmm.
and it's pretty much just a guaranteed one CP3
Yep.
mortal wounds, which is a really good rate.
Yep.
But I remember being impressed by them when I played them
They
in the
have a
past, and
strat
now they're
for
a lot better.
maxing flamer shots.
Mhm.
They have a Overwatch with someone else and heroically intervene 2d6 inches, which is a really, really powerful strat, especially when you fill a lot of flamers. And just Salamander's quite good. I'm
Okay.
not sure if they measure up to the likes of Iron Hands or Iron Warriors.
They're definitely under them. The question is they are A tier? I would say let's put them at top of B for now, just to see how A tier is shaking out, and if we decide that they're better, move them up.
That's fair. It is worth noting, it is kind of funny because they have just strictly worse version of the Iron Warriors trait.
True.
They ignore AP1 exactly, and that's just not very good. So
Not
their
one
trait
and
did
two.
get a lot, yeah, their trait got a lot worse, which is unfortunate for them. That's the thing that hurts them because it got reverted.
Yeah. But yeah, B
Uh,
seems good.
yeah,
I think they're
still
strong.
fine. Mhm. Word bearers.
Oh no, that's
Um,
Black Legion, my
oh,
friend.
Black Legion. Sorry,
That
sorry.
is the Eye of Horus, I
That
believe,
is
that
the Eye
looks
of
upon
Horus,
us.
yes.
Um, where is the Black Legion going to go? Well, Black Legion, more than any other Legion, I actually think they were one of the best. They got hit with the double whammy of losing Armor of Contempt and point increases. And particularly Abaddon is still a must-have if you're Black Legion. So you're just gobbling a 50-point increase right there. And the Terminator
Terminators as well.
nerfs, yeah, Terminator nerfs is huge. Like I still feel like you bring Terminators, or maybe you're now having to be forced to pivot into Chosen or something. I just think they got hit too hard. So I think they went from firmly an A tier faction down to, I would say, like a
Low,
B tier.
low
Yeah.
B, I think.
Yeah, I think worse than Death Guard.
I think they're comfortably worse than Death Guard.
Yeah, they still have some good
They
stuff.
stay
And their
out of C
trait.
tier.
Yeah, their
Their
trait
trade is
isn't bad.
legitimately quite good.
Yeah, their trait is not bad.
Yeah. Space Wolves.
Ooh,
They benefited a lot from the changes. They
they
got
do.
some fairly good units. They're still not a super strong chapter. They're probably the hardest hitting melee chapter. In terms of raw, just numbers, how hard can you hit as Space Marines?
Yep.
But they still have some problems, which is just that they don't have any significant durability boosts. They don't have any significant they have some mobility boosts, but not great mobility boosts. They have like an advance in charge warlord trait that can give out advance in charge once
Yep.
only after they've charged something. So they're solid. They're
I
not
think
great.
they're good. I think they're good. And the reason I think they're good is they have a very strong fight last relic. It is hard to use
It is.
appropriately, but they have a very strong fight last relic that can really affect combat armies. And you kind of have a choice. Like you can go for big damage and take a Whirlwind of Rage or whatever it's called
Yeah,
with the
Wound of
sixes.
Rage, Born Heroes,
Yeah.
plus
It,
one
it
to hit auto
causes
exploding sixes. Yeah, that's the normal
exploding
combo.
sixes, and that combo is
hmm
really good for just damage output. They could also go with their standard chapter trait, which is just a heroic intervention for all
It's
their
got a second
units.
part.
And well, yeah, but the heroic intervention is really good for specifically combat manipulation purposes.
It's
And
plus one to hit it and heroically intervene. So don't forget about the plus one. It's good.
yeah, it's a solid option, especially if you want to lean into the combat manipulation stuff, which is again, I think one of the better ways to play them. Wolfguard Terminators are 34 points per model with all the upgrades free, which is not bad. And you can do other cool things. Like there's a really powerful stratagem that causes one of your psychers to give I believe it's like an aura of light cover or something like that.
You think that's a psychic power?
Okay,
Just
something
yeah.
along like
They
you can
actually
do
have
some
pretty
cool
good
stuff.
psychic powers.
You can do some cool stuff. So they are not bad. I would not say they are anywhere near the A tier at the moment. I think they're
Not really.
probably B tier.
Yeah,
Um,
say high B.
I think they're better than Blood
Um,
Angels.
they're better than Blood Angels. I might put them above them children, just
Ooh,
because I think their data sheets are better.
I don't actually agree with that.
Well,
I think
Noise
Noise Marines
Marines.
I think Noise Marines legitimately are the entire Emperor's Children faction, and the fact that they have a Fight's Last character and Fight on Death makes them very good
Yeah,
into
that's
melee
true. Lucius
armies.
is really, really good.
So behind Emperor's Children, I would say.
I can get behind that.
Mhm.
Thousand Suns. I like them.
I like them a lot. Why you like them and why I like them may be different reasons.
Yes.
But I'm going to start by saying that Thousand Suns were definitely one of the factions that have received nerfs, and they've received nerfs on multiple fronts. They've received points nerfs on some of their units,
Not many.
and not many. On some of their units, their mission play got a little bit worse. And also importantly, they lost the ability to bring auto hitting flamers because flamers no longer auto hit. And because of that, their offensive capabilities have taken a gut punch. So are they still good despite those nerfs? Yes, because I think they were actually the S tier of the former meta. I think they were up there at least. And
I can't disagree with that. I think Thousand Suns plus Flamers was S tier.
yeah. And now they've taken some hits. You're maybe not having to take Zeech Demons anymore. And if you don't, Dread Blades are now an option that are kind of interesting. But that's the standard build. That's the Warp Flamer build with like rubrics and the Exalted Sorcerer and
some
everything
Terminators as well.
And some Terminators as well.
Yep. Terminators did get a hit because losing Armor of Contempt is a bit unfortunate for them, but
still good. So that faction or that side of the spectrum, very good.
New favorite.
Let me prime a little conversation here, folks. Have you heard, my dear friend, of the Warp Meld Pact Army of Renown?
I have.
You have. So
from you multiple times.
For me, a lot. So here's the deal. That is a meme, and I only ever tried it out at an event as a meme. Because people bullied me into bringing the goat army because it's a silly goat army. It's an army of renown that essentially just gives you benefits for your Bray herd. So that's all your Zangors. It also benefits your Chaos Spawn, and it gives you more Cabal points for bringing Zangor Shaman. Okay, so that army of renown surprised me at how competent it was at traditional horde style tactics in the previous version of the game before this update. With this update, a lot of those things I just mentioned got some kind of a points reduction or some other kind of benefit. So for instance, the Zangors now no longer have to pay for the banner and the horn, and you actually always bought the horn. So you save like 15 points per squad for these free upgrades, more or less. So your Zangors got cheap free upgrades. And your Chaos Spawn, for no particular reason, decided to take a bit of a point reduction. If I think I'm correct there. Yeah, they took a point reduction. And so I was mathing it out for my old list, which I thought was a very competent list. And I now have like 160 more points to work with. And here's what it does, because I haven't gotten into what it does or why it's good. So I actually think it is among the best ways to play Horde left in the game. And there's not a ton. Why it's good at playing Horde is because it gives you access to a lot of the things Horde armies want. It gives you access to model recursion. That is, you can bring models back, and you can bring models back in multiple phases. You can either resurrect goats in your psychic phase using a Cabal ritual. So when you bless one of the squads, you can resurrect some of the fallen models in that squad. The second thing you can do is you can bring it back in your command phase. Yeah. Yes, and it's an aura around a character. So you choose a character, and all of the injured squads around it are going to bring back models. What's key is that since it happens in the command phase, you can resurrect models and then regrow that unit back onto an objective. So there's a lot of really specific ways that you can manipulate the models that you are using so that you can use them to score points. So at the end of the command phase is when scoring is done for holding objectives. That's super important. So if you use their stratagem to regenerate their models and you regrow back onto an objective, you still get to score that objective on your turn if you hold it. What that's really good against is it's good against shooting armies, because what I'll do is I'll stage big units of the Zangors behind like pieces of terrain or ruins or something on the midfield, and I'll string a few of them out to touch an objective out in the open. They shoot at me, almost nothing kills a full 20-man unit in one activation when they have their buffs. Because they get a 4-up invuln, because you get one from the Diamond of Distortion and also from the Discipline of Change, so you can actually have 2 squads with 4-up invulns, and you can give them -1 to hit from Glamour of Zinij. With -1 to hit and the 4-up invuln on a 20-man squad, it's very hard for them to die in one shooting activation. So one of their units shoots at my unit. So let's say I have 3 models that they can see on this objective. They shoot at me, they kill, let's say, 10 goats. It doesn't really matter, as long as the squad is alive and doesn't run away from morale. So they kill a bunch of them, but they don't kill all of them. The squad's going to sit behind that wall. Command phase on my turn, I can set it up so that they regrow back out onto that objective and they still get to keep it. So then it forces your opponent to actually have to come into you, to push into your Bray Herd. And when they do that, that's when the Chaos Spawn become big money, because the Chaos Spawn are fantastic countercharging units, surprisingly good for the Thousand Suns faction. And if they get too aggressive into you, you can really punish them with those. So Zangor Shamans went down by 10 points, and you were already bringing 2 in these lists. The Chaos Spawn went down, and now Zangors get some free upgrades. I legitimately think that might be the best way to play Thousand Suns moving forward. And I'm very confident in saying that that is an A tier list.
Anyways, Ultramarines, which is also one of your pet favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Also for an Army of Renown reason, and it's in the
also for
same
an Army
book.
of Renown.
It's in the
It,
same book as the Goat Army of
and it's
Renown,
also never seen any play
and it's also never seen.
competitively.
And it does a very similar thing to the Goat Army of Renown. So unfortunately, we haven't entirely moved off the topic. Both the Warpmeld Pact and the Castellans of the Rift Army of Renown, which is their unique Army of Renown that requires that you take all Primaris models, have the always coveted redeploy plus pregame move combination.
It's so good.
That
Redeploy press P game move is okay. It's one of the reasons why Guard is so powerful right now.
legitimately,
It's
yes.
one of the major reasons that Guard is such an incredibly strong army. And they just have it for it's expensive. It's 2 CP for redeploy and 2 CP for pregame move. It is not cheap, but it is incredibly powerful.
Yes.
Mm.
Base Ultramarines still have some play. I still think they're
Yeah,
decent.
100%. They're still just really good actually. They have some very strong stratagems.
But I think Castellans of the Rift for me are probably the best way to play them. Not probably, it is the best way to play them, in my opinion. And I think that moves up their stock quite a bit. I would
I think
say
they're weaker than Iron Hands, I'll say that. Iron Hands damage output boost stratagems, psychic discipline, they are better than Ultramarines. But and better than Castellans, I think.
I would say like the things that you also want to bring with Castellans of the Rift though is like the Inceptors and stuff that can kind of like snipe out really nice angles. And so there's just a very good way to play like an aggressive Space Marine faction. And I think they might be better than Iron Warriors. I would tentatively say. Now, at minimum, they're better
I think that's
than,
probably true.
yeah, at minimum, they're better than the Thousand Suns list I talked about. And they also have a fantastic strat to give a unit OBSEC.
Yes, which is just
beautiful.
really, really good.
It is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that is a good spot for Ultramarines.
Yeah,
If
I
you
can
haven't
respect
looked
it.
at if you haven't looked at the Castellans of the Rift, go look at it. If you're a Space Marine player or you like Ultramarines, or maybe you don't, and you just want to rage about how many cool rules they get, take a look at that. Take a look at that build, because I think it's legit. Yeah.
Word bears. Probably after Creations of Bile got nerfed into the ground, I think they are now probably the best way to play melee focused Chaos Space Marines.
I think that is true. I think that is true. They hit hard. They get full rerolls in combat, their first round. And they have resistances to mortal wounds.
Always
Also
good.
good.
Less relevant than it was in the previous meta, but still very good.
And they have some of the best relics in the game.
Yep, they have incredible relics and a very solid secondary. Secondary is just solid. It's not incredible, but it's very respectable.
But yeah, their secondary does what they already want to do, which is kind of like castle up. And they have like things like the Baleful Icon, which can stop rerolls and all these other cool things. So I think they're strong. Where do you want to put them?
I think they're quite strong. They're definitely above Space Wolves.
I think they're above. I think I would even say they're above Emperor's Children. I would say
I
they're
think they're
above
above Emperor's Children.
Salamanders.
I don't know if they're above Salamanders. Salamanders have so much play.
Okay.
I'm moving Salamanders up to bottom of A. I think they're good enough for it.
Okay. And word bearers will be kind of top of B or bottom of A,
Yeah,
depending on how the
I
rest
think
of it
that's
shakes out.
I think that's totally reasonable. Word
I
bearers have
agree.
a lot of very, very powerful abilities.
Speaking of powerful abilities, um,
World eaters. They
world
don't have a codex.
eaters, they don't have a codex or powerful abilities. They're they're
No.
they're they're the opposite of the spectrum. I think they're D and don't have a codex. Maybe when they have a codex,
Yep.
they'll be up in S. Who knows? That's
I'll
gonna be
agree with that.
crazy. But right
White
now,
scars.
you're right. I will
Yeah.
spare them a moment. Right now,
Okay.
they are playably usable. And if you're just wanting to play an all melee move forward faction that doesn't have a lot of tricks, their problem is they
Hmm.
don't have a lot of tricks. And so yeah, that's
They
what we
have
do.
like no tricks. Um, there is some cute things you can do with demon allies using a Rock of the Warfiend because everything gets corn, but the corn keyword.
Yeah.
There's some cute demon engine stuff you can do. It's not that good, but no, it's decent. Um, all right, moving on to White Scars. Now this is a melee chapter.
Yeah, this is a melee chapter that makes the Blood Angels blush. Like they cannot
Yeah.
compete with the speed, with the true unadulterated speed of the White Scars melee faction.
White Scars are
Um,
very, very fast.
advance
And
and
speed win games.
charge. Yep, advance and charge.
Flatly. Hmm. They
Good.
have a lot of just wildly powerful stratagems as well.
Tell me about them.
Mm,
I'm less informed on White Scars. I have played against them a couple of times before,
yeah.
but I always felt like there was something I was missing. So tell
Yep.
me about White Scars.
So there's a few things they've got. One of them is 1 CP. This is one of the better stratagems they have. 1 CP when something falls back from you, um, you get to make melee attacks against them, and then you get to consolidate into them. That's
Okay.
really good.
Yeah, that's
Another
pretty good.
stratagem, consolidate D3 plus 3 inches. Decent. If you have a movement characteristic of more than of 10 inches or more, you instead consolidate D6 plus 6 inches.
Oh wow, so just get a wrap is what
Just
that
as
is.
much as you want.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Wild. Um
They also have a bunch of fallback and shoot abilities on their bikers. They have 1 CP for sorry, not fallback and shoot. They have 1 CP advance and shoot with bikers,
yeah.
which allows can be used on invader ATVs with multi-meltas, which
Yeah.
is dangerous since those automatically advance 6 inches and then they can charge afterwards, especially on not on invaders so much, but on assault bikers.
As a melee oriented speed based faction, I think they do all of those things I just said pretty well.
Hmm.
So I know they're an A tier faction, but where do you think they would go? I think they're better than salamanders, or I know they're
I
better
think
than
they're better than
salamanders.
yeah, they're better than salamanders. They also have a pretty good psychic discipline, by the way.
True.
But so, um,
How are they stacking up against Iron Warriors? Are we thinking they're better there? I'm not necessarily
uh,
sure of that.
I
I would
think
say
they're
they at least
better than Iron
compete.
Warriors.
Yeah. Okay.
They might be better than Castellans, honestly. I think
Really?
they're better than I honestly think so. Just
Okay.
because speed wins games. The problem they had was just yeah, they could get up in your face really fast and do a lot of shenanigans, but they just didn't have enough damage output, and they ran out of stuff really fast.
Mhm.
That was their problem, and this just solves that problem. The new Marine book, the new Marine, well, not Marine book, Marine changes, just
Yes.
helps solve that problem a lot.
The new Marine experience.
New Marine experience. And finally, Alpha Legion.
Yeah. So we
Alpha
uh we cheated a little bit here,
Legion.
folks. We cheated a little bit here, folks. We had mentioned Alpha Legion before we shot today's video, and we both think it's much better than you might assume.
Rifle Legion is silly.
They're
It's
super good.
really good.
They're super good.
Really good.
It's unpopular faction. That does not mean it is bad. And I have personally got my butt kicked several times by Mike, who is playing Alpha Legion. And that thing we were talking about earlier about why Castellans was good is like they have this pregame move and redeploy tactic. They have that. They just have that. Except cheaper. They can pregame move 2 units 9 inches. And
no, it's not 9 inches. It's just as far as you want.
Oh, just yeah. And you can bring things like warp talents, and that just sets you up to either have a really good alpha strike or a really good counter strike. Yep. And the redeploy obviously very powerful. Their secondary is pretty good, which for Chaos
especially with the pregame move. Yeah. So their secondary is a funky one because I think it's been both overrated and underrated. It got incredibly strong because now it completes at the end of your turn. You have to be wholly within 6 inches of the opponent's deployment zone. Not that hard. And you can do the action. Completes end of your turn. If you're in the deployment zone, it's 4 points. Otherwise, it's 3 points. Already, that's just a good secondary. Like, flatly good, especially since you can fall back and action in Alpha Legion. Where it gets stupid is if you do this while in range of an objective marker on a 4-up, it can no longer ever be held by the opponent again.
Oh, it's so brutal. So they get to burn
Which means you have a 25% chance in every game to go first and then roll the 4-up on an objective marker that is like right next to their deployment zone. If you do that, you've almost won on the spot. Your opponent is at such a absurd scoring disadvantage from that point onwards that it's incredibly challenging to recover from. Not to mention all the secondaries. There are so many secondaries in this game that care about, hey, you have to do this on an objective marker that you control. You can never do that again. Yes. Not only that, but for Alpha Legion, you don't have to actually control the objective marker that you're in range of while you're doing this. You just have to be on it. The opponent could have 10 models on it with OBSEC. You do the action, you roll a 4-up, they don't get it anymore. They'll never get it again, actually.
Yeah. So also, side note, really funny, if you ever do that against a Sisters player with their Shrine, just let me know.
Yeah, they just get a 0.
Yeah, like let me know in the comments that you do that, and I will give you the biggest virtual high five of all time.
That is literally Sisters have lost the game.
Yeah,
at that stage.
And nobody, like, here's the thing: nobody has really experimented with Alpha Legion to see what they're capable of. But every time I've played against it or explored the faction a bit, I've been impressed. They have a lot of small, kind of cute combos, like they can do their little headhunter pistol combo to do mortal wounds. It's kind of cute, whatever. But they have other good stuff too. They can pass out OBSEC. That is a warlord trait that they have. It gives it's like they can like fall back and shoot or perform. No, they can shoot and perform an action on a unit or give that, and it gives that unit OBSEC. So their warlord can pass that out to 1 unit a turn. That is very strong. And they have the sabotaged armory stratagem, total meme stratagem, but it's like a good meme. If they should kill a vehicle, they can make it automatically explode. It's really hilarious. It's like knights. Yeah, because knights are popular still. Like Imperial Knights are a very popular faction. Chaos Knights are a very popular faction. It comes up in those games where you just like pop something, lots of damage. Yep. They also have the 2 CP conceal stratagem, which allows a unit to not be able to be shot unless you're within 12 of it, or it's the closest eligible target. And there's so many ways that you can manipulate that during a game to make it so that you can make certain units really irritating to deal with. And last but not least, the Chaos Space Marine faction really got punched in the guts by the Armor of Contempt change, except the Alpha Legion, because the Alpha Legion brings a lot of the units that just do not care. And an example is that Warp Talons we just mentioned. Warp Talons do not care about losing Armor of Contempt. In fact, they are better because there's no longer Armor of Contempt on the opponent's side, and their AP2 claws.
Possessed.
Yep, same with Possessed. Their AP2 claws get a lot better. And their game plan really is move up, destroy some of their objectives, play the mission really well, and then you can have things like Warp Talons tie things up to prevent fallbacks and pretty much mess with them in their deployment and slow them down. And I will say that the Alpha Legion is actually very good into Guard, and Guard are anticipated to be kind of one of the big meta factions. You have ways to stop their Kasrkin squads. You have ways to tie them up and have combat manipulation. You have ways to burn their objectives, and you have ways to tie them up in their deployment. And that's what they hate. So I think Alpha Legion are fantastic. We've talked about them. I think they're amazing. Kit, where are we putting these guys?
Right here.
Oh, that's too crazy. Okay, that's too crazy, but I love it. Let's go with it. Now, Iron Hands probably are better, but I think the ceiling for a good Alpha Legion player is crazy high, and I'm excited to see what they're able to do when good people try them. So
I think Alpha Legion are so underrated, and I think that I'm going to get flamed for this, and I don't care.
So overall, not as much darkness and doom as I anticipated for our Chaos Space Marine friends, considering that we did get a few kicks in the pants, whereas the Imperium got a few nice little buffs. It is still definitively an Imperial victory, unfortunately, on the list, and Dark Angels definitely take up that top slot. I do agree with you there.
Dark Angels are extremely potent.
But if you take the time, you really learn your faction, Chaos Space Marine are still definitely viable. I could see easily anything on the B tier or above doing well at a large event. And that's something that I want to reiterate. If you are not happy with your faction's placement on here, I more than encourage you to come up with a list that works for you. It might have not been something I considered, because whenever we get into one of these new releases with new points and all this other stuff, there's always something missed. Maybe Iron Hands tomorrow come out and they are actually as insane as everyone had been saying before. Maybe they're a total dud. Maybe I'm wrong about Ravenwing and they're not actually as scary as I expect them to be. So there could be a lot of changes on this list as time goes on. But I do think this catches a lot of the broad strokes of how each of these factions are going to feel in this kind of new mini edition with Arks of Omen.